went into medicine for the wrong reasons if you care at all about money.
Ryan Fightmaster MD, 3 reasons why doctors are quitting medicine, and the real reason.
Today, I'm breaking down the 2 most common reasons people leave medicine. These are my best hypotheses, spliced together through reading Reddit, analyzing subreddits, watching YouTube videos of doctors who recently left medicine, and also thinking about my years of interactions with colleagues. At the end of the video, I'll also share the reason why I left medicine, a reason that I haven't seen discussed anywhere else, and the reason at the root of the doctors quitting medicine problem. Let's get to the reasons why people leave medicine.
You gotta admit, Fightmaster is a pretty sick doctor name. The only name I can think of that was cooler is Dr. Saver, back when I was in college on the student stroke team.
Reason number 1, burnout, aka lack of fulfillment.
Burnout isn't just lack of fulfillment, right? Burnout is, well, actually, let's ask ChatGPT to make sure that I'm not gonna be biased in how I say this. Burnout among physicians is a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by prolonged and excessive stress in the professional environment, characterized by emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and reduced sense of accomplishment.
When I was burned out, it went like this. I'd see a patient who had endured something horrible, was in a lot of pain, or had experienced some pain in the past, and I couldn't feel empathy anymore. It wasn't that I didn't want to feel what they were going through or that I didn't want to help them. It's just that I couldn't. My reservoir for caring was empty. I felt nothing. This is a common experience in medicine. The sad part is that the experience doesn't stop when you leave the hospital. Burnout and that feeling of not being able to feel anything anymore, that happens outside. It happens in relationships too. It happens in your whole life. And this is bad if you're a human being because empathy is our lifeline. Without empathy, there's not much life.
You're depleted, you can't connect with others, the things that you used to love and that used to bring you joy may be far more dampened. There are a lot of reasons and ideas as to what is causing the increased rates of burnout in current day. There's charting, there's EMRs, there's the reduced time with actual patients, there's the decreasing sense of autonomy. There are all these reasons that we actually cover over on this video and a few others on both the Medical Insiders channel and on this channel, but we don't have all the time to dive into each of those right now.
Let's say you work in a coffee shop or you work in an office setting. You have a really tough week, you deal with a bunch of tough clients, or you have a bunch of deadlines you've got to hit, it's a stressful month or two. Then you have a period of inactivity. You have a weekend to catch your breath. As a physician, you don't get that. The work hits different. When you show back up to work, the people you're seeing are often having the worst days of their life, and it's your job to fix that. That drains your tank really fast. And if your tank is already low because you're really burned out, it becomes impossible to ever get your tank back up to a place where you can sustainably do your job and enjoy it, unless you change something.
Keep in mind, Fightmaster is or was a psychiatrist, and based on the specialty, you're going to have varying levels of this emotional connection. And I'm trying to remember the right term for this, not emotional burden, but the amount of stress and difficulty and pain and negative outcomes from your patients can weigh on you. And I talk about that in previous videos about how even with neurosurgery, seeing a lot of negative outcomes there made me realize it wasn't going to be a good specialty for me because I felt that decrease in my emotional state and I felt sad for several hours after something tough or challenging happened. So part of it is your personality, part of it is the specialty you choose.
A lot of people leave the profession, apparently. What I saw happen more, and something that I tried in my own experience in medicine, was to start working less. Enter locum tenens.
You see a lot of doctors on YouTube talking about how they're going in the direction of locum tenens rather than having these traditional salaried positions.
Enter somebody going from corporate medicine back into academia. Enter someone taking on a 20-hour commitment instead of a 40-hour commitment. For a lot of people, this works really well. I have seen some people change specialties even and experience massive quality of life increases. And I've seen some people just start to work less or go work for a different company and experience a much better environment. And I do think that that helps.
2 important points here. Number 1, in the same specialty, you can go to different hospitals and have, or clinics or whatever institutions, and have varying levels of lifestyle and satisfaction and autonomy and all those things. And then also the specialty. So what I try to emphasize to pre-meds and to med students is that when you're choosing your specialty, don't just choose what is the sexiest or seems the most exciting based on the zebras. The zebras are the rare cases you occasionally see. Think of the bread and butter, the things you do day in and day out, and how does that influence your state of mind, your satisfaction? Because if you are pursuing a specialty that is sexy and has these occasional zebras that are super fascinating, that's going to be less than 5%, probably even less than 2% of your time. And also keep in mind that your preferences, your energy level is going to change over time. So as an example, when I was a med student, I was very interested in microsurgery, but I started shifting more toward hand surgery, not because I thought hand surgery was necessarily cooler or more exciting than microsurgery. I thought microsurgery was the pinnacle of plastics. I thought it was the coolest, most sci-fi, most energetic, or it energized me the most out of any subspecialty within plastics. But I also knew that I was in my 20s at the time, right? Being in your mid-20s, you have way more energy. And I knew that in my 30s, 40s, 50s, and so on, I wouldn't have the same level of energy or preferences, and microsurgery may begin to weigh on me more because it is a more challenging lifestyle compared to something like hand.
But I've also seen some people not figure it out and stay burned out. Those people end up becoming the jaded physician. Next reason, or shall we say sub-reason. Reason 1A, insurance, EMRs, charting.
Those are a big part of the burnout issue.
There's just too much time at the computer. There's way too much time for physicians at the computer. All of that time contributes to burnout because people don't go into medical school to type.
Digital Doctor goes over the EMR, the electronic medical record, and the many benefits it does provide. I think it's very easy for us to focus on the negatives. It also talks about the negatives. I found this a very fascinating read, and for those who want to know more about the EHR and how the digitization of medicine has changed both the life of physicians and patients, I recommend you read this book. Link down in the description.
At least I didn't go into medical school to type. I went into medical school to please my parents. I did not go into medical school to type.
By the way, I do not think that going to medicine to please your parents is ever a good idea.
Different story for a different video. Of any single day that I worked in medicine, even if it was a lighter day, an 8-hour clinic day, or if it was a 16, 17, 18-hour day in the hospital, at least half of that day was always spent typing notes. That's a lot of time sitting. This is not why people go into medicine. This is a reason why people go do something else besides medicine though.
Well, the excess time spent charting is a large reason for burnout, and you can see a high degree of correlation there. Something like emergency medicine, where you have a lot of charting, you have a lot of running between patients back and forth, versus something like neurosurgery. Now, you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone that says that emergency medicine or psychiatry for Dr. Fightmaster has a more challenging lifestyle than neurosurgery. Neurosurgeons are notorious for working the hardest, putting in the most number of hours, and yet their burnout rates are not nearly as high as something like emergency medicine. So is that because of self-selection bias? Those who are going into such a challenging specialty just have more resilience to not burn out? Possibly, but the other explanation is that so much time spent charting and not actually interacting with your patient either face-to-face or under the knife, that is widely considered a major factor contributing to burnout.
And this reason is often cited as a reason why people are getting out of medicine. Okay, next reason. Reason number 1B, bureaucracy. Again, this is a sub-reason below burnout because I do believe this contributes to burnout. Doctors don't go to business school. Doctors don't go to management school. Things start to get hairy when you ask a group of doctors to self-govern itself. When you add in hospital administrators that incentivize those leaders on productivity, example RVUs, that is a recipe for decreased enjoyment across an entire workforce. Not all the time, I must say. There are some wonderful clinics to work for.
It's the over-prioritization of profits that results in worse patient care as well as worse conditions for physicians that makes them unhappy, which then leads to the worst patient care.
Some amazing business structures and hospitals. There's great medical schools, there's great residency programs. There's a lot of really good places to work. This doesn't happen everywhere. I'm just saying that a lot of people report bureaucracy as a primary reason why they decide to leave medicine. I find this a strange reason to leave medicine though, because if you are to go and work anywhere that has a group of people together working, you're going to encounter bureaucracy.
You need to fulfill your various bureaucratic requirements, but at least you can be the one in charge to control how that's done.
So I think it's like a wherever you go, there you are type of situation, but regardless, this is one thing that people say contributes to them leaving medicine. Next reason, this one is separate. Reason number 2, equal pay, less work. Occasionally, a physician will have a side interest that grows with them on their path through medical school, residency, and attending physician life. Eventually, this side interest can take on a whole new life of its own. For a strategic few, they can parlay this growing side interest with their medical expertise into a non-clinical job outside of medicine, where they're not working 80 hours a week on patients whose lives depend on them. Enter biotech jobs, enter AI healthcare startups, enter management consulting firms, enter big pharma.
Compensation and total number of hours worked are important factors that, despite what the virtue signalers may say online, like, oh, you went into medicine for the wrong reasons if you care at all about money. Obviously, you want to get paid fair for the amount of time, work, risk, etc. you put in. But other factors that can drive people away from medicine include purpose, meaning, impact, excitement. I would argue that being the chief medical officer of some medtech healthcare startup is going to be more exciting, and there's more growth and more room for you to change and grow as a C-suite executive than what most people would experience in clinical care.
This is the exact solution that I hoped would save me while I was floundering and burned out at the end of residency. But I did not have a side interest that I could just hop on to train track and take me off and out of burnout.
Not surprised he's a surfer.
If you read Reddit enough, this strategy appears to be something that people have actually accomplished. I don't know anybody that's done this, but it appears possible. And people say that it is a lot better than the life they had while they were in medicine. So you can take that for what it's worth. Let's get to the next reason and the last reason. Reason number 3. A lot of doctors never wanted to be doctors. I wish there were a screening test with a mandatory truth serum that every medical student had to take before they started medical school. It would go like this. If you say yes to any of the following questions, go home. Do not go to medical school. Question number 1, are you here because you don't have anything else left to achieve? If your answer is yes, go home. Are you here because your parents want you to be here? If you answer yes, go home.
That is a huge one, especially in certain cultures.
I would have said yes to both of these questions. I never wanted to be a doctor. At that point, 10 years ago, it was daunting for me to say I needed to go figure out what I really wanted to do with my life instead of going to medical school. I was scared. I didn't do it. It took me 10 years to do it. And the fact that I never wanted to be a doctor put me at the most risk for being burned out later in my career.
Because you need that purpose to drive you forward through the challenging times. And with less purpose, if you don't actually want to be a doctor and you're just going because of parental pressure or prestige or these other factors that aren't purpose driven enough, then yes, your risk of burnout, your risk of not being happy with medicine exponentially rise.
And I suspect it's the underlying reason most people leave medicine, because they never really wanted to be there in the first place. Let's say you do well on your first standardized test whenever you're in kindergarten or first grade, or whenever they start standardized testing kids these days. Parents get the score back, says they scored in the 99th percentile. Everybody's so proud of their kid. Kid continues to make A's all the way through school. Kid wins a bunch of awards through grade school, then makes honor roll in high school, starts doing all these extracurricular activities, gets into some really nice college, does a really good job while they're in college, gets a 4.0 grade point. What's the natural destination of that outcome? Medical school.
I can see the argument there, but couldn't you also make the argument for business school, law school, some degree of engineering? I actually think that engineering and math and those kinds of courses are much more challenging from an intellectual level versus something like medicine or pre-med or MCAT, USMLE, med school, etc.
It's assumed that once you get into medical school, everything will work out. This is a lie. Medical school is hard. For medical school to work, you have to want it in your soul. That's not even speaking about residency or attending it. It does not work out for everyone. I'm telling you this because whenever I look around at the people I work with, medical students, co-residents, attending physicians, work, there weren't that many of them who really enjoyed what they did. I would throw the majority of burned out physicians into the category of them never wanting to go to medical school. Really? Yeah, I'm not a mind reader, so I could be wrong.
I'm trying to think about my own circle and my connections and the people that I know who are burnt out or more or less happy with medicine. I do actually a lot of one-on-one calls with people that are in the shoes of deciding whether or not they want to go into medicine at all, to go to med school, or based on certain specialties and such. And those that are going into medicine for reasons like parental pressure or prestige or money, they tend to cluster into certain specialties or certain types of practice at the end of the day, where maybe they couldn't go into plastics because plastics is so competitive, but they go into OB-GYN and then they start a med spa and start doing breast dogs, which they're completely not qualified to do, and they have terrible complications. And then my buddies that I trained with in plastics residency tell me how they need to then fix those issues in SoCal and such. But then there are also those who went into medicine for the right reasons, and when it comes to applying to residency, they don't have a clear draw. And they may choose some specialty, they may not love it, but they say, hey, this seems to be the best fit. And then over time, they grow to like the specialty more. And they say, well, medicine isn't what I expected as a college pre-med where I idolized it, yada, yada, yada. But as a career, as a job, this is such a great job and I appreciate it for these reasons. It's hard for me to apply these same kind of broad strokes to what Fight Master is saying here.
When you look around at the people you work with, in any career, you can always tell the people who really want to be there. The people I worked with that suffered the least amount of burnout and the ones that recovered the fastest from the darker days were the people that loved it. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Medicine has a lot of problems, but I have plenty of friends who really enjoy their jobs in dermatology, and ENT, and urology, and plastics, and gen surg, and OBGYN, and psychiatry. The common denominator in these success stories is passion. You gotta love it. Moral of the story, if you really love it, if you really love the idea of treating people and helping folks and figuring out answers to really hard problems, go be a doctor. You can be happy doing this job. The suffering that's inevitable, the sacrifices that you will endure will be worth it if you care.
And the key thing here is to figure out whether or not you're going to be that person that will find satisfaction in the career. That's why we have the Day in the Life series. That's why we have the So You Want to Be series, because we want to give pre-meds a more accurate representation of what it means to be an attending physician in whatever specialty. Since most pre-meds have a completely incorrect view of what it means to be an attending physician, completely misaligned from reality. And many people focus on this idea of wanting to help people being the number one, singular, most important reason to become a doctor. But I would argue that's not the case. It's actually a cluster of different things. And there's no right or wrong. If you look at what it means to be a doctor and you say there are 10 characteristics of what you're going to be doing day in and day out, you need to figure out how much of each of those 10 items align with what you want out of life and how energizing or how positive each of those are to you. So if you say complexity and addressing these complex issues in a specialty that does focus on a lot of complexity and complex issues, but that doesn't excite you, then maybe don't go into that specialty. Or if face-to-face interaction and dealing with patients and counseling them and helping them through challenging times is exciting to you, awesome, then go choose that internal medicine or psychiatry specialty. And if not, consider a different specialty. But understand the clustering of the 10, 15, 20, whatever number of characteristics or common traits you're going to see in various specialties, and see if you align with any of those. And if you don't, with not a single specialty, and keep in mind that medicine is very broad. Pathology versus internal medicine versus family medicine and neurosurgery are all very, very different. If none of those align with you, then yeah, choose something else that's not medicine.
If you don't, or if you never did, it's worth finding out what you do love. Everyone deserves a chance to wake up excited to go to work. And it just may not be medicine for you.
I thought that was a very thought-provoking video by Ryan Fightmaster. Definitely a different take on the reason why doctors are quitting medicine. And while I don't fully agree with all of his conclusions and reasons, I do think that there is some truth to what he's saying. And one thing that's coming up right now that is never really talked about are the factors outside of one's professional life that may influence the person's decision to leave medicine? Is that person having health issues that doesn't allow them to continue medicine? What about family, aging parents or kids or their partner, or other things in life not just related to your career as a psychiatrist or emergency medicine doctor or insert specialist? I know for myself, if I never got into entrepreneurship and never spent the time and energy and multiple years pursuing various entrepreneurial pursuits, I would have never left medicine. It wouldn't have even been on my radar to quit plastic surgery. And one of the commenters recently asked a question on an AMA. I thought it was a very thought-provoking question. Kevin, if you had 250K or 300K in loans, would you have quit? And probably not. I think when I was in residency, I only had 30K in loans. I had 50K college and med school, but by the time I started residency, I had already paid down about 20K of med school just from my YouTube videos. And with 300K or more than $250,000 in loans, it would have been much riskier to leave. I also think, in somewhat of a twisted backwards way, I'm fortunate in some ways to have inflammatory bowel disease, to have Crohn's colitis, which is a hybrid between ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, because I was hospitalized at 18. I've had now like 7 or 8 colonoscopies. I've had issues with my health here and there, especially this year. I've been getting sick like 5 times and had to go to the ED once. And by understanding the fragility of life, by understanding that invincible feeling of when you're younger, that life's gonna go on forever and you're gonna be able to do these great things and you're gonna always have this energy, that hit me square in the face to say, that's not gonna be the case. Life is fragile. You don't know when things are gonna end for you, and you wanna make this one short life truly count. And I would argue that was a very large reason as to why I also pursued the entrepreneurial path. Because to me, it does seem like the riskier path out of the two to do medicine versus this entrepreneurial pursuit, but there are distinct advantages that align with a life is finite mentality with this riskier path versus the safer path. Probably not the most eloquent way of saying that, but hopefully you guys understand. Let me know your thoughts with a comment down below. Much love. See you in that next one.